What's up, everyone? So today I'm going to talk about how I went from almost serving 5 years in prison to graduating college and owning a small business, and on my way to my journey to become a millionaire, which of course I am not yet, but I just want to talk about the journey to where I am today because that's my end goal, my ultimate goal. So, right now I'm 30 years old. This actually goes way back. We're looking, kind of starts around when I was 10, 20 years ago. So, I grew up in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Most people probably don't know what that is outside the NYC metro area, but essentially, it's comparable to what's in Connecticut, of course. It's comparable to other cities, New Haven, Waterbury, Hartford. So it is the largest city, population-wise, in Connecticut, though it is pretty small in terms of square miles. But I guess it's not really important. What is important is kind of the background of how I grew up there and exactly how things kind of happened, in a sense, from around that age 10 to 18, 20. So 18 was when I was arrested, but it was like 21, 22 when I kind of finally made the change. So yeah, around 10, that's 2005. That was 2005, yeah, end of 2005. End of after August, September. So that's when I was 10. So I would say life was pretty simple at the time. It wasn't to that point yet. I think the ultimate point came afterwards, but that's when I kind of started getting the first let's say introduction into like the more negative side of life, and especially growing up in inner city. So growing up when I was that age, I think that was my first like actual encounter. I've had encounters with drug dealers and whatnot beforehand as I was a child, but I think that was my first real, when I was 10, it was my first interaction, because I used to, bike around the neighborhood, and it's a pretty bad neighborhood, so it probably wasn't the best idea, especially for someone who's 10 years old on their own, but I did so nevertheless, and that was my first real encounter with so there's the local drug dealers. So back then, Buicks, Crown Vics, they were kind of like the drug cars. So it was these two guys. Car was pretty dark, blacked out tints. It's an old Buick, older model. Don't remember the exact model. Do remember it was dark brown, blackish. So they both pulling up to me on a bike, cause 10 years old. They asked me, if I smoked. I was clearly a child, but when you're making money like that and owning the streets, I guess it doesn't really matter. I told them no, and just kind of pushed it on my way, and they just stared me down for quite some time before I kind of hit the block and bounced out of there. But I think that was my first encounter with actually verbally being pulled up on and asked if I actually wanted something. So of course beforehand there was times where I was my parents had substance issues back in the days, so especially growing up in that neighborhood, going into those areas like East Side and Bridgeport and South End, you'd encounter drug dealers. This is early 2000s, late 90s. It was pretty bad. Back in the 1990s, especially in the early 90s, Bridgeport was averaging 40, 50, 60 murders a year, so it was a pretty bad time. But I mean, this was, now we're talking late 90s or 2000s, still pretty bad. I mean, still averaging like 20, 30 murders a year. I mean, for a small city, under 150,000 people, I mean, it was still pretty intense. But it was, you get the stares from the dealers. They pull up next to you, stare you down. It's pretty bad areas that, my parents would go through. But I think that was just like the kind of the first experience, kind of just giving you context about like how I grew up and where we kind of, the origins were. So it really started hanging out on the streets when I was like 12, around then. That's really when I started kind of, because I was in public schools, and then my parents for some brief time put me in a Catholic school. So I kind of started, in the Catholic school, you kind of hang out with kids that have no, that's the different, those Christian and, private schools, the students, kind of, it's a whole different world. They're separated. So these are kids that are coming from the better parts of the city and the suburbs. For some time, in middle school, I was kind of pulled away from that. But I had some issues. I've always struggled with mental health issues, though. After, when I was just starting 8th grade, so now I'm 12, 13. So I actually left the school, and then I was homeschooled for the rest of 8th grade. And that's when I really started hanging out on the streets, getting a different friend group that was more from the public schools and the street side, so it kind of deviated. And I had been in public schools way before, actually. The first time that I even got into any problems, this was back in 3rd grade. I was actually stabbed in 3rd grade by a student who brought a knife to school, like a little pocket knife. I mean, this is way before I even gotten, like, the whole scene. Kid like cut me up pretty bad with a knife. Back then it was pretty crazy because you could bring weapons into school. I mean, this is early 2000s. I mean, the only school shooting or incident was Columbine at that point. So, no one checked or anything. It wasn't an issue bringing weapons into school. But, just giving you examples. So now, back to 8th grade now. So I left the now I'm out of the private school, and now I'm homeschooled, and now I'm hanging out on the streets, making friends from all the local public schools that we had in our area, and of course from the high schools as well, because now I'm in 8th grade. Your friend groups start to change. So at that point, it was pretty intense, just hanging out on the streets all the time. I mean, I would do my school lessons, in the morning time. I actually did focus and did school lessons. I had to, the city actually, for homeschool students, they mandated that you produce some work. So of course I had to do work, buy like workbooks and stuff, and had to do it with my mother. But then of course, I was hanging out on the streets, midday to the nighttime. And of course, it became progressively later and later that I would start coming home. Eventually, first it was 5, 6 o'clock, but as I became older into my teenage years, eventually when I was 21, by then, I was out all night, coming home at 6 o'clock in the morning. But, for this sake, we're back now, 12, 13 years old, so we'll stay on point there. I'm kind of make this like part 1, part 2, part 3, because I'm not gonna, we're already 10 minutes in, I can't talk about the whole thing at once. But yeah, so I'll leave it here for the part 1 because it's 10 minutes, and we'll continue on in the next video.